Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Miha and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we will explore how AI can be used as a learning tool if you want to do deep dives into really specific topics beyond just using a search engine to ask a question. For example, let's say we're interested in learning about the long-term implications and impact of the Cuban Missile Crisis, rather just asking what year did it happen or what was the Cuban Missile Crisis. AI can be a powerful tool if we want to delve deeper into topics. In today's video, we will use Eurovision as an example and explore the cultural impacts of Eurovision on the development of European identity over time, specifically in the Cold War era. All right, let's get started and jump to the lab. Welcome to the lab. Let's get started. Because we are doing research today, we will begin by giving ChatGPT a specific set of instructions, specifically that we really want sources. For this following conversation, I will be doing research. Please provide sources for any arguments, points, or recommendations. Use reliable, verifiable sources such as well-reviewed books, peer-reviewed journals, or respected news outlets. In this way, we're giving ChatGPT some really specific parameters, right? We don't want it to reference things from random Reddit posts, right? We want things that are as verifiable as possible. All right, it understood our requirements, so let's get started. Let's dive into Eurovision. Now, how you ask questions matters. If you just want to know what is Eurovision, you might as well just use a browser. So here we want to ask a little bit more in-depth question, something that will give us a little bit more context. So let's think about the cultural implications, right? And let's ask AI to help us better understand the historical and cultural impact of Eurovision. So we might use a prompt like this. What are the long-term cultural impacts of the Eurovision Song Contest on European identity? Please provide historical context and remember to cite sources. Also, explain how Eurovision has been interpreted differently in Western and Eastern Europe. So now we've given it a broad set of topics to explore, and let's see what it gives us. So it took 25 seconds to do this. I sped up time a little bit. And here is a summary. We have a little bit about historical context. We have all of our sources, so we can obviously verify all of these. Tell us a little bit about the long-term cultural impacts on identity, a little bit about differences between Western and Eastern European interpretations, and it's giving us a little bit of a historical arc, how it started and how it got where it is. And here is a set of resources for further reading. Excellent. So this is a good way to start exploring a topic with a lot of sources, which again, we can verify individually. Now, let's say you're researching a topic and you want to prepare a kind of mini curriculum for yourself. You want to prepare some study guides because you really want to learn. Maybe you're working on a research project, trying to better understand how Eurovision impacts identity, or perhaps you're doing policy research, looking at how entertainment industry has impacted culture, and this is an example. We can ask ChatGPT to create a mini curriculum for us, to give us a learning plan so we learn more about the cultural impact of Eurovision. And we can also ask it to break this down into different levels. Design a learning plan to help me understand Eurovision's cultural impact. Break it into beginner, intermediate, and advanced stages. Suggest readings and reliable resources for each stage. So this prompt will give us 3 different levels of learning. And even if you're an expert on a topic, I would still recommend a prompt like this. Maybe the things that are outlined in beginner are too simple. You already know a lot about this. You're already prepared well or very versed in a topic. But getting a little bit of the orientation and context, things that beginners might be after, would, one, help you verify AI's accuracy. So if you know about the topic, it's still worth looking at the kind of beginner stage just to make sure it's on the right track. It might also give you a fresh perspective. Perhaps some of these books or readings it recommended offer a different way of looking at the cultural impact of entertainment industry that you haven't considered before. And it might also give you ideas of how to communicate this to non-expert audience. Perhaps the readings recommended in the beginner or intermediate stage keep things a little bit simpler and might make it a little bit easier for you to communicate complex topics. So here it gave us recommendations with readings for each of the stages and some supplementary material. And with a little bit of a breakdown. And it even proposed creating a 12-week structured syllabi, right? Which we could ask it to do. In fact, let's ask it to do that just to see what it comes up with. Yes, please follow through and create a 12-week structured syllabus for me. So this is going to give you a structure so that if you did want to follow this topic on your own in a more manageable time frame, here are the recommendations. And all these sources are well cited, so you can verify all of this information on your own. All right, now let's look at something else you could do, right? Another interesting way of learning is through simulations. So we could give ChatGPT a simulation to run. Let's try that. Pretend you are a cultural critic in 1970s, very skeptical of Eurovision. Argue why it has little to no cultural value using examples from that time. So this is a very specific simulation or role that we gave AI. Let's see what it does. So it'll give us an overview of what a critic might say, referencing ABBA, so we know we're in the right time frame. And yeah, give us good arguments. So this might be a great way of getting counterpoints. Even if you believe that Eurovision is a interesting and an important cultural phenomenon, giving AI these type of roles, asking it to run through these type of simulations will give you a different perspective. And I'd recommend for any topic, asking AI to give you both the pros and cons, the for and against arguments for whatever topic you are researching. We could even go a step further here, and we could ask AI to play the role of this critic and have a conversation with us. We did a previous video on this topic, so I won't do that here, but you can imagine a role play with AI where it is actually playing that critic and you are trying to convince it that there is value to Eurovision in terms of European cultural identity. We could also go down different rabbit holes and we could get really specialized. For example, we might consider the impact on Eurovision on, say, the Cold War. So we could ask it to narrow down this topic to something much more specific. Explain Eurovision's role in the Cold War. How was it perceived by different blocs? Please provide sources. So you can easily stray down different rabbit holes depending on what your interests are. Here is a summary. I'm starting to see that it's using similar sources. Now, we could also force it to use different sources, but this might be a good starting point. We could also ask it to help us prepare study guides or study aids. For example, we could ask it to create a multiple choice quiz out of almost any content, including this. Write a short quiz with 5 multiple choice questions, testing our knowledge of Eurovision's cultural impact. Include the correct answers with citations and references to those answers. And here we go. We've got a short quiz, multiple choice questions with answers and references for those answers. So we can, of course, verify them. And you can merge this with what we did earlier with our 12-week curriculum, right? So you could have a short quiz at the end of every week if you were really trying to delve into this topic and this is something that you really wanted to learn. And finally, we can connect topics to new topics. So let's say that we've just done this research, we've learned a lot about Eurovision, and now we think, well, how is this relevant today? And again, fair question to ask, and we could go down that rabbit hole. Now that I know a little bit more about Eurovision's history, pose 3 reflective questions that would make me connect these insights to modern debates about culture and politics. And so this might be an effective strategy of identifying new rabbit holes to go down for research, or it might help you connect the topic to new sources or completely new ideas. We can also ask ChatGPT to translate whatever research we did into something that's digestible and understandable for a non-expert audience. For example, we could ask it to reframe this in language that would be understandable to an American policymaker who may not be familiar with Eurovision. How could I explain Eurovision's cultural role to an American policymaker who has never heard of it? Provide a structured answer with sources. Some ideas on how we could approach explaining the uh, impact of Eurovision to an American audience. So AI is useful when you really want to dig into a topic. If all you wanted to know what is Eurovision, then a search engine is sufficient. But if you really want to dig down, you want to see where the conversation gets you. We went from Eurovision to the cultural impact, we went to the Cold War, we went to policy. That's where AI shines because it will help you narrow down those rabbit holes with sources. The last thing I want to highlight is that you can turn on something called deep research. Many AI models have a version of this. What this will do is prepare a in-depth report for you on different topics, including, let's say, Eurovision. So let's build on this example. Based on everything that we've discussed here, please compile a report on Eurovision's cultural impact. Prioritize academic work and work by respected historians. Also consider its impact on the Cold War. Usually when you're using this option in ChatGPT, it will follow up. And that's because, one, this is a pretty lengthy process. You'll see that when we start this, we will not get the answer immediately. It can take a while. OpenAI really wants to make sure it's spending its resources in the way that you intend. And two, it will create a report that's actually tailored to what you want. So let's quickly address these questions and then see what ChatGPT will prepare if we're using this research option. One, this report is meant for general information. It's a learning tool for myself. Two, I'm looking for something at around 5 to 7 pages. Three, the focus should be primarily on the Cold War era from the 1970s up to the 1990s. Stop with the expansion of the European Union in the early 2000s. So now we've given it a little bit more context and we'll let it run. It will give you status updates, and the bar will very slowly progress depending on the question you ask, depending on the complexity and how many sub-questions you give it and so forth. This process could take a while, so please be patient. So while ChatGPT is doing this, I want to show you a similar tool in Google's Gemini. Under Tools, you will see an option called Deep Research. It does something very similar. And let's give it the same prompt so that we can compare. I'll include both reports in the video description below so that you can decide which one you like better. Here is the report from Gemini first. It gave us a quick overview. It has a number of sections, including methodology. So it explained how it approached this, a research project, and yeah, a pretty lengthy report, which of course now we can edit, continue interacting with. But for now, we're just going to export it, save it, and I'll share it in the video description below. So here we go. This is the report. We've got 15 sources. It took about 6 minutes to complete. And yeah, here's our report. Similar to what we got from Gemini, a little bit different structure. But yeah, there we go. And our sources at the bottom as well. So this is one way that you can use AI to learn. You can identify interesting rabbit holes and do deep dives into topics that matter to you, and then segue into different types of contexts or subtopics that are most relevant to what you are trying to do. This is one way that you can use AI as a learning tool, especially if you're interested in deep dives on specific topics. Again, if all we wanted to know was, what is Eurovision or what year did it start, we should have probably used a search engine. AI is much more useful if we're doing deep dives on topics and if we're exploring tangential areas, tangential topics, or if we want really specific sources. I should also point out that both ChatGPT and Gemini have a learning tool. You can turn these on in the chat themselves. Where these two options excel is if you are uploading your own content and you want to create study guides or quizzes based on materials that you share. They are designed to help you memorize and learn, while what we did today is better suited for deep dives into specific topics where you want to keep things a little bit more open-ended and where you want to define the conversation and you want to define the process that you want to pursue. My personal approach in using AI to do deep dives is very similar to what we did today. I begin a conversation to explore a topic and narrow down a niche that I'm interested in. Then I will ask AI to prepare a longer 5 to 7 page report. I will then feed this report to Notebook LM, which I will ask to create a podcast on the topic, which is something that we covered in a previous video. I'll then listen to the podcast while I'm walking Stroopwafel and IO, and that gives me a base understanding of the topic. It helps me narrow down the specific areas that I want to explore. I will then go back to AI and I will explain that this is what I'm interested in and ask for specific book recommendations and podcast recommendations that target that specific niche that I want to explore on my own. I hope you found this useful and this gave you some idea of how you can use AI to dive deeper into specific topics. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up. And as always, if you like this channel, consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.